welcome to the Base Path Podcast, brought to you by New England Baseball Journal. I'm your host, Dan Guttenplan. Today, we have the coach of the University of Rhode Island, Raphael Cerrato, is joining us by Zoom. Coach, thanks so much for taking the time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I wanted to check in with you here in the fall season and kind of find out what that's going like for you. So many of our listeners and our audience members have the goal of playing D1 baseball, which really has different fall than any other sport. How was the fall season for Rhode Island?
It was good. It was very different because we were getting a new turf field, which was awesome. Brand new field. They finished it a few weeks ago. It was a little delayed, which most construction projects seem to, that's the case. So for most of the fall, we didn't have a field until about August or October 11th was, I think, the first day we got on. So it was interesting. We were going off campus Tuesday, Thursday to a local high school field. Sunday, we went a couple times to another local high school field. We played Salve Regina. We were supposed to play them at home. We ended up playing them at Cardine's Field in Newport, which was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
The game, beautiful fall evening. It was actually, the field's surface isn't great for us, but the setting was a great crowd. It was a few hundred people there. So our guys didn't complain. We knew we were getting a brand new field. We needed it. Our old turf was definitely worn out. So it's been different. We were taking ground balls and just like the regular grass outside our field, and it is not, and it was not easy taking fly balls and ground ball. It was, so we were just making do with what we could. Luckily we have a good indoor facility that we could hit, throw bullpens. So we were able to get a lot done, but it was a very different fall in terms of at least getting a lot of like team activities. We just didn't really have facilities to do it. But we're happy to have the new field for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of picturing like when you're a teacher, you kind of carry over the lesson plans from year to year. And then all of a sudden you're teaching a new subject or a different grade level or something. And every single night you're back up doing the lesson plans. Is that what it was kind of like when you can't just run your usual fall program without the field?
Yeah, it was very different. We couldn't really do, quality team stuff, the bunt defenses, the coach pitch games that we do, which we love for like defense and base running. We couldn't take BP on the field, just especially seeing those balls live off the bat. And so we figured out a good plan. It just by like that fourth week, it was getting a little redundant because we couldn't do a lot of different things. But I thought it was actually good. It's funny, like looking back now, I think especially with our infielders, I kind of like taking the ground balls on a really bad surface because it makes them work, getting good hops, have good feet, have good hands. Because we got onto our new field and it's like, if we make a single error this year on a ground ball, like I am not gonna be happy because it's just what a difference. Like getting onto like a brand new turf field, like there's zero bad hops. It plays very different from our old turf, which was old. It was about 16 years old, so it's so different from that. But yeah, we did a lot of different things, but it just by that last third or fourth week, there's only so much you can kind of do when you don't have a field.
Right.
So especially the defensive stuff was kind of getting. So we were just super excited to actually get on the field. And when the guy from the construction company's like, "Coach, the field's all yours," that was the best thing I heard the entire fall. And then the next day we played Holy Cross. So they just finished in time to play one of our fall games.
Oh, nice. Now, what about from a recruiting perspective? I know the fall is a good time to, host clinics and get guys out to, take looks at the campus. And when your field's not in place, maybe you don't want to be showing off your field. Were you able to get recruits on campus?
We did. We had some guys come on for sure. This next recruiting class is definitely going to be small. So we didn't have as many as we would normally have. But we were bringing kids on and showing them because they could see the process being done and worked on. So they knew we were getting a new field. So we weren't afraid to bring kids on campus and see, not only see our field, but in the what it's going to look like. And then all of our other athletic facilities, the training room, the weight room, the campus is beautiful. The area around the campus, the beaches and things like that. So we're still able to do the same as pretty much as what we had done in the past. We always do a fall development camp, which is our favorite camp to do. It's mostly Rhode Island kids, and it's small and something we do twice a week for 4 weeks. And it's basically like running 8 practices, and the kids love it. We get to see kids, basically every Rhode Island kid that's ever come to URI has come to that camp. We just couldn't do it this year, which was disappointing, because we didn't have the field and we had to postpone prospect camp. And my assistant coaches have started a travel ball team as well, which they've done a tremendous job with. And normally we would have, games and tournaments and stuff on our field. So we just couldn't, and that's revenue too for the program. So we definitely missed out on some recruiting, some revenue, things like that. But in the end, it was worth it to get this field that we have now. We're super excited.
Yeah. Yeah. I would think if you're a recruit, you know the project's not going to take 3 years. So you're like, hey, well, by the time I'm on campus, this will be a new
Oh yeah.
field. Um,
Hmm.
from a recruiting perspective, it seems more and more these days. Like I just saw the University of Virginia's men's basketball coach walked away, and I've heard some of the similar stuff from Coach Saban, from Alabama, why he retired, and other coaches who have been around. You've been around since 2014 as a head coach at Rhode Island. And there's not as much NIL money. That's kind of what those coaches were complaining about, that guys were getting paid. But there is, it has shifted the way that guys are getting recruited. A lot more is happening through the transfer portal. Not as many guys right out of high school. How have you adjusted to that? And what is your overall feeling about the way things have shifted in the world of recruiting?
Well, I've come to accept it. It is it's where we've gone the last couple of years. It's very, very different. Um, and from what it was, basically prior to COVID. So, I've come to accept that this is where we're at. We still have there's obviously some big things we still don't know for sure. We expect to have the Division 1 rosters getting reduced to 34 for
Hmm.
next year, which is fine because prior to COVID it was 35, so that's not a big deal. What the biggest question for us, especially mid-major, Division 1 schools, is we're waiting to hear is when are you going to have to set your roster now? Up, always in the past, we've always had a few extra guys. We're not going to end up getting 20 plus 30 scholarships, like some of the SEC or ACC schools will get. That's our scholarship situation is not going to change. So we do very well with non-scholarship kids, and we'll we'll always redshirt one, two, three kids that end up being. I mean, we had a kid who redshirted a few years ago who played AAA this past summer, and he redshirted as a freshman. So it's kind of the big question for us, and is when are they going to change when you have to set your roster? If you have to set your roster in September at 34, that is going to be very, very difficult, not only for us, but for every Division 1 program. Um, where you basically that's your roster set, and you can't have any walk-ons, you can't have any tryouts. You can't bring in a couple extra arms to see if they develop, and then maybe, like I said, maybe they redshirt. And we've had some tremendous success stories of kids who have redshirted that just weren't ready to play a lot as a freshman. And would you rather? And then it's a discussion we have with kids coming in, like, yeah, there's a possibility this could happen, and we have that conversation too. And some of the conversation is, okay, do you want to have 10 at bats or 15 at bats as a freshman, or do you want to get potentially 200 as a fifth year senior and be going for your masters? Or a pitcher do you want to have 2 or 3 appearances, or do you want to have pitch 80 innings as a fifth year senior? So it's a pretty easy decision for most kids. So that's going to be a big factor. I believe they're going to probably stay with what we currently have, which is setting a roster right before basically the first game, which is great. It allows you to keep a few extra guys in the fall. You get to see guys, basically from September until February, work out with the team, see if they have a future, develop, and then maybe they're not ready that year, but they can come back the next year and, and be a huge part of the program. So I hope, really, really, really hope they don't set it at, where you have to set your roster, at the beginning of fall. That would be very difficult for basically everybody, not just the mid majors, but every program. Um, so that's a big change. Like I said, the 34 man roster is not a huge change because it was 35 prior to COVID.
Yeah.
Now the whole transfer portal issue, it's tough. I mean, we've lost a few guys, but we've also gained a few guys. It's not a situation where I know there's a lot of schools, a lot of programs that are going to, basically not recruit high school kids anymore, or maybe only bring in a couple high school kids and just, why would you if you can just get a kid who's already proven it?
Right.
Whether he's a great Division 2 player or 3 player, or he's played at another division and put up numbers and he's going to be good. Whereas with high school kids, you're not quite sure. I don't want to run it like that. We're going to kind of basically use a transfer portal to maybe fill in a hole or two, or like this year we brought in 3 transfers. Last year we had some extra roster spots. We brought in, I think, 6. Next year, as of right now, who knows? We may not bring in any. It depends on what happens. So yeah, the transfer portal is tough. It's not. I don't love it at all, and I would say most coaches are going to say the same. Every coach that I've ever talked to is. I think having the one-time transfer is fine, but then you get into the multiple transfers, and it's even more ridiculous for football and basketball to Division 1 level. But have multiple transfers, you're going to 3 or 4 different schools. I mean, what's going on with this? Are you going for education? And it's tough with the chemistry. You want to be able to keep a kid and develop that chemistry with the team, and the kid develop those friendships with their teammates that have been, that stayed together for 2, 3, 4 years. Now, I don't know how much that's going to happen with players at a lot of schools, and that's tough. I mean, it's just very, very different. So I'm not changing my approach with our team. I feel like we treat our kids very well. We feel like we have an excellent culture here where guys like being at URI, which is my number one priority. Is I want our kids to have a good experience. Obviously, winning and competing for championships is a big part of that, but you want your kids to have a great experience. And if someone wants to leave and try to do something else, then there's not a lot you can do. But we just hope. But like I said, in the past couple of years, it's basically kind of been, we've lost some guys, but we've gained some guys. So it hasn't really hurt or helped us in a sense. Um, but it's very, very different. But we're not going to be kind of school that's going to just go after transfers. I mean, I want to develop kids. I want to bring kids as freshmen, develop them. And if you develop them so well that they, move on to an SEC school or ACC school, then you're doing your job. You kind of have to look at it like that in a sense. So it's completely different scenario, situation now than it was 5 years ago. And it's not easy. It's definitely more difficult and not as fun, to tell you the truth, in terms of having to work through all this and worrying about, you bring in a stud freshman. I'm like, all right, he's just going to leave after a year. But hopefully you're giving the kid an awesome experience. You developed him as a player. And they love it and want to stay. We've had quite a few, a few of our seniors that are on our program now that they can play anywhere in the country, but they love the URI. They want to stay here. And the thing about baseball, and honestly, most of the kids want to get drafted too. And you can get drafted anywhere. And especially with the data we have TrackMan, we have all that stuff. Like the scouts can see it. I mean, you don't need to be at this school or that school to get drafted. Like, pretty much it comes down to data for all the scouts now. It's very little, in-person scouting. So, yeah, it was a little long-winded there, but kind of give you an idea where I stand, and it's something you have to accept. And how do you try to make it an advantage for your program? And where do you go? It's still kind of a work in progress.
Yeah, you talked about those success stories of guys who redshirted and, ended up playing professional baseball even. And I wonder if those stories would even happen anymore, because you tell a guy, you fall of his freshman year, hey, we'd like you to redshirt this year. He might be gone by the spring, playing for another program. I wonder if that's even still possible in today's day and age.
We'll find out. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll definitely find out because I mean there'll probably be a couple guys that will redshirt this year that are good players. I mean we've talked a lot with my staff the last few days. We're actually, today one of our things we're working on is just putting together what would our travel roster be right now? What would our 35-man roster be, or 38? I'm not even sure exactly what we could be up to 40 for this year, but with Title IX at URI, we probably won't be able to keep 40, but we have a little more than 40 guys. So it's going to be some really very difficult decisions because this is one of the deepest teams we've ever had, pitching especially. And there's going to be some incredibly tough decisions, not only of who makes a roster, but who's traveling, who's pitching. They're definitely good problems to have for sure. Um, but yeah, we'll see how that, things with redshirt kids. It's like, I'm just going to go somewhere else,
Mhm.
so we'll find out. That'll be a question you can ask me in a couple of years how that's working.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about recruiting. Obviously, you still have your hand in the high school recruiting world, and it's not just transfer portal type stuff. You mentioned scouting, being so analytical now, where it's video, it's TrackMan, exit velocities, pitching velocity, all that kind of stuff. Um, are you going out? Is that restricted to like scouting opponents, or are you scouting like actual recruits that way now, where you're not actually seeing them in person, or if you are seeing them in person, where are you finding them?
I mean, we are obviously we use a lot for scouting opponents, the data and synergy, TrackMan, True Media. There's so much out there that we have all of that. So there's a lot of data. Not only we can see our opponents, but they can see us. So, but there's a lot in terms of that to work through. In terms of recruiting, we absolutely want to see kids in person. Um, how are they the how do they act? Are they good teammates? Do they look like they actually love playing baseball? There's kids out there that like they don't even look like they like being on the field. I mean, that's not the kind of kid who's you want in your program because it's a huge commitment to play, especially Division I athletics. It is a big commitment. If you love it, it's awesome. It's great. But if you don't love it, it's too much of a grind. It'll be frustrating. It'll never work out. So it's talking to coaches, it's talking to teachers, talking to guidance counselors, talking to obviously multiple coaches. So seeing them in person is super important. Um, the data part of it's great. I think it's more so for pitchers. The data is more important, in terms of the different things that we're looking for that we think can be successful, that are allow you to be successful. For I get it all the time. So and so I hit, my exit velo is 97. I'm like, okay, maybe you hit one ball 97, but you swung and missed 8 times before that. So that stuff for the position players, the data is not as important for sure. But pitchers, it can certainly be helpful. But you still want to see them in person. How do they compete? Um, are they the first guy at a dugout when your team scores a run, or do they not get off the bench when your team scores a run in a game? Like those are we want certain guys in our program. Obviously, you want talented players, but you want the right kids. And I think we have awesome kids in our program. And I think we've done a really good job of recruiting quality individuals, which makes it fun. I mean, we work with these guys every day. We see them every day, and you want to be around people that you enjoy being around. So obviously talent is super important, but you gotta need to see someone in person and and when we go to games, it's sometimes we want them to know we're there, and then sometimes we don't want them to know that we're there. Like, how are they acting when they think nobody's watching? So there's a lot of things that we look for, in terms of recruiting the high school kids. And like I said, the data can be helpful, but much more for pitchers, because most of the pitchers now are going to facilities and they're getting all kinds of, they have TrackMan, they have Rapsoda, whatever they might have, so you can get some good data and kind of feel like, okay, this is. But also, if you go watch a kid in person, you pretty much, if you've been around a game, you're see what you see is going to be, was probably going to be accurate in terms of what you thought the data would be. So it's definitely part of the toolbox, the data, but it's not everything. for sure. And we had a kid who graduated a few years ago, Josh Broder. If you watch him take BP, he would be the least impressive kid on our team. Power, exit velocity. And again, this is a kid who's a walk on to our program and really a true walk on, ended up being a captain. Um, but if I had to pick a guy like during his career to be up with a guy in second base with 2 outs, game in a line, I'm picking him. And this is a kid who's barely ever hit a ball 90 miles an hour. Never hit a home run in his career. Wouldn't have shown the kind of data you'd want. But again, this is a kid, he's a winner. He's a gamer, he was a leader, played the game the right way, was clutch, tough kid. So there's a lot of factors to it, the recruiting, and data is just one part of it.
Yeah, you were reminding me of, I remember I did a podcast with Coach McDonald at UConn. He's a recruiting coordinator there and pitching coach, as you know. And he was saying it's sometimes, well, now so much of the scouting, happens at these WWBA events and, some of these big showcase events throughout the summer and the fall, because during the spring, you're in the middle of your own season. You're not getting out to see guys. Maybe if somebody's in state and you can make a quick trip midweek, you do it. But a lot of it happens during the summer and fall when they're on travel teams. The problem there is guys care about winning for their high school team and their prep teams in the spring. And then when they're playing at these showcase events, they don't care what the final score is. Sometimes it ends in a tie and they don't really care. Is it difficult? Do you find it difficult when you're seeing guys in person to really gauge how invested they are in baseball if it's happening in that type of showcase environment?
It is. You're 100% right. And we try, it is difficult during our season, but I definitely try as best as I can to see kids in high school and see kids like high school. My favorite thing is going to high school state tournament games, because that's where, and again, it's hard with our season. Hopefully we don't have chances. We usually don't because we're playing the conference tournament and so forth. But yeah, summer ball is very different. Summer ball, the travel ball is good and bad. It's good because it gets a lot of kids together, it gets tournaments, it gets a lot of good players in one spot. So awesome. You get to see a lot of kids. But it's not real baseball. You're not trying to move a kid over from second base, nobody out. Like, every kid, all the kids pitch 2 or 3 innings. They're not pitching more than that. For the most part, the winning and losing really doesn't matter. The kids don't really care that much. But there are some games, and here you usually get one, that are super competitive. Teams really getting after it, and those are the games you love in the summer. It just doesn't happen that often. So you obviously you're seeing talent, you're seeing how they play the game, you're seeing the kind of energy they have in summer ball and these tournaments, and then you're talking to people. You're talking to high school coaches, and you're trying to really kind of read through the line. If it's someone you don't really know, like a high school coach very well, you kind of trying to read through the lines and kind of get a feel for what they're like. And then obviously there's a lot of high school coaches that we do know, and you're asking certain questions and getting certain feels about kids. So you're 100% right. It's the travel ball is it's not real baseball. It's not, it's not real baseball because it's not winning. Our jobs, a lot of it's depending on winning and losing, and that's very important at the college level and so forth. So, it's doing all the little things, and you're trying to hopefully see kids thinking about that during those summer games, and at least, like I said, at least showing that they care, like that they bring energy, and they're like, they get excited when they score a run or someone makes a good play or the pitcher gets out of a big jam, or showing some emotion. Within reason, obviously a little more. But I'd rather see someone's a little more emotional and you can tone it back into the next level, as opposed to seeing someone that just doesn't look like they care at all. So you're really trying to look at a kid. If he's got talent, you're trying to really focus on him and how he acts, and hopefully you're getting a feel for, that's going to translate into a winning baseball player at the next level.
Has the rise of travel ball, it seems like everybody now is playing summer baseball and fall baseball that wants to play Division I baseball, at least at the college level. Has it impacted like the quality of the recruit that you're seeing in terms of, well, it probably impacts it in a couple ways. Like they've been playing almost year round longer, so maybe their skills are a little bit more developed, but maybe like because it's all games that they don't care who wins, the situational awareness isn't there, or
Mhm.
maybe the pitchers are looking at the radar gun or velocity more than they should be about getting people out. How has it really changed the game, or the quality of the recruits that you're getting?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest differences is kids are definitely throwing harder. There's no doubt. I mean, they're training year round. They're doing these velocity programs. They're doing most of it's good. It's good. And I get it. A kid who's throwing 82, 83 in high school, he's not getting recruited by a Division I school most likely,
Mm-hmm.
especially a right-handed pitcher. So he knows if I have to throw harder. Well, also some of these kids aren't ready for that, and there's get injuries for it. So I understand the reasoning behind trying to throw harder, but it doesn't just because you throw harder doesn't make you a better pitcher at all. Because you absolutely see. I mean, I think we've looked at data too. There's the increase in walks in college baseball has gone up significantly in the last like 10 years. The velo's gone up, the stuff has gone up, but not necessarily they're not necessarily becoming better pitchers or knowing how to pitch. They just throw hard. They don't care where it's going because they want to get that 90 and that's going to get them on a radar, which again, I understand where these kids are coming from because you will get on a radar if you're hitting 88, 90 out of high school, so forth or above. But it doesn't necessarily make you a better pitcher. And that's the thing. You got to kind of learn. The kids have to learn when they get to us in a sense, like how to pitch, how to work batters, how to read swings. Obviously we're calling a lot of not all of them with our pitchers, but we call a lot of the game. Just understanding how to pitch and how your pitches work and how to work batters and that's very different from just going on child ball and just trying to throw as hard as you can, throw a few good breaking balls. Um, but that's probably where the biggest difference you see now is velo. I mean, shoot, I think we have 15 pitchers that are 90 plus on our team. I mean, when I played in the early 90s, if you were throwing 90, you were getting drafted.
Yeah.
Now we have 15 guys. If you're not throwing 95 now, you're not getting drafted as a righty, for the most part. So it's the same thing from our guys is they want to throw harder because they know if a kid who's 88 to 90 right-handed pitcher might be great for us, but he also knows like he really loves baseball, wants to get a chance to go to the next level, so they really want to throw harder. But you just have to be careful on how you go about that. A lot of that's naturally. I think we have a great program with Coach Fisher and Bo Broody as our pitching development assistant that do a lot of things that um, aren't like necessarily drastic changes to help guys just naturally doing it the right way in terms of gaining velo, improving your stuff. We do a lot of things differently that I think help develop guys. Um, but so that's one of the biggest differences. Like you certainly see the skill is good, and I feel like I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, there's no good players out there anymore." I'm like, there's a lot of good players. There's a lot of good players out there. Maybe they play the game differently, but there's a lot of talent for sure. And like I said, you can't get too wrapped up in the velo. You see guys that are pumping 90, 92, but they have no idea where it's going. I mean, you're not going to, as a high school kid, I'm like that. The kid's not going to make it unless he drastically changes. Like he's not going to make it at the Division I level. Because if you're getting behind, I don't care if you're getting behind guys. I don't care if you're throwing 95, 96. You're getting behind hitters. You're going to get lit up.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
so but yeah, that's the biggest thing is certainly the velo. Because kids are just training and doing a lot of good things. Some things are maybe too much for the younger guys because their bodies aren't ready for it. But um, but there's just so much more science out there in terms of how to increase your velocity, how to increase but it's not about that. How to, you want to improve your secondary pitches. Do you have a changeup you can throw for a strike? Do you have a good slider? Stuff that we look for as a pitcher. It's not necessarily velo. It's like what can you have, for a high school kids, like what is your swing and miss pitch? What pitch are you getting Division I hitters out with? Like that's number one in terms of when we look at pitchers. It might be your fastball, could be a slider, could be a change. I mean, we brought in a lefty freshman this year he's a little tired this fall. If he pitched this summer in the collegiate league this summer, I mean, he was 80, 82, but he's sidearm lefty, um, who has a chance to be dominant, and he was dominant as fall, and he's throwing 81 miles an hour, but he's like so funky and so different that, and he dominated a collegiate league, the perfect game league this summer as a high school senior, dominant number. So you're looking for different things, different types of pitchers. But you want kids that are going to throw strikes and be competitive. That's number one.
Good deal. Well, Coach, do you have a couple of minutes to hang in for the 3 Up, 3 Down segment? Just
Sure.
General interest baseball questions. All right, let me introduce you to our producer, David Yaz.
3 Up, 3 Down.
Yes, welcome back to 3 Up, 3 Down. 3 questions for both of our panelists. And today for 3 Up, 3 Down, we're going to do baseball dilemmas or decision making. Yeah, this will make sense when you hear the questions. Question number 1. If you're a manager and your best hitter is slumping, do you keep him in the lineup for confidence? Do you move him down in the order? Do you try something different? Coach, your thoughts on that?
It depends on the kid, for sure. That's an easy way out. I mean, but I think it depends on them. But slumping, if anything, I would probably move him into a more of a priority position in the batting order to show like you are the guy. You're good. So that'd probably be my first option, is moving into a better thing. But just knowing the kid and knowing who they are, because every player's different. So some kids you might need to sit. Some kids they might just need a day, a mental day. They sit out and I've done that many times. Like, you know what? Let's just take a day off, relax, watch the game. Don't and you're going to be back in the lineup tomorrow. That's an option. Sometimes an option is, okay, we're going to move you down for a few games. Just take a little pressure off you. You're still a guy. You're going to be right back there hitting 2 or 3 or 1 probably in a week. Some guys you just stick with them because they're what type of slump they're in. Maybe they're getting good swings. They're just not having any luck. So there's a lot. I can't really give a good answer. So there's a lot of different possibilities.
Because it's hard. It's a hard thing to fix because it's one of the great mysteries of baseball is how a guy can be hitting 347 and then all of a sudden he goes 0 for 17. So, if we believe the movie Bull Durham, you're supposed to wear female underwear under your uniform or maybe have your bat cursed by a witch or something. Yeah.
There's a lot of different answers to that for sure.
Yeah. Dan, your thoughts? I don't know if you were ever in a slump as a young man. Yeah. How'd you get out of it, or what's a good slump breaker?
Well, it depends. I was going to say, you said, Coach Cerrato said it depends on the player. I think it also depends on the degree of the slump too. I mean, some guys, I'm a Phillies fan, and this year, Alec Boehm in the playoffs, like he was swinging and missing by like 8 inches, 12 inches. Like he wasn't even close. And so in that instance, I think he needed to sit down, and you got to get somebody who's going to be productive in a playoff series. But then you look back, remember Dustin Pedroia's rookie year, he was hitting like 150, but he was hitting, the ball on the nails and just lining it right at people. And Francona was just like, hey, he's our second baseman. He's going to hit at the top of the order. And he stood by him and ended up getting rewarded for it. So I tend to sway on the side of stand by the player, leave him where he is. He'll work it out. But you're right. Sometimes you do have guys who take it really hard mentally and need to sit down and take a day to kind of get away from it. So, but yeah, I'd err on the side of standing by the player.
As a Phillies fan, I thought you were going to bring up the Trey Turner thing. So
yeah, I just saw that on Netflix, and I was watching that. Yeah, that was a cool special.
A great short film. It's a rarity these days, but it's only like 35 minutes or so. It's called The Turnaround on Netflix, and it's about how, told through the eyes of a fan who is kind of a little bit of a down on his luck kind of guy, but loves the Phillies, and he and many others started this viral thing where everyone was just going to give Trey Turner a standing ovation. Who cares if he was 0 for 17 or whatever he was?
Right.
And it worked.
He called in. He called into WIP, the sports radio station, and was just like, apparently that guy at one point in his life was suicidal and like needed some people to come lift him up. And so he called the radio station. He's like, it's not going to help us, I know how Philly fans are. There's a lot of booing and, a lot
Sure.
of, and he was like, I don't think that's going to help him. Let's give him an ovation. They did. And he snapped out of his slump,
Yeah.
like in a huge way.
It's amazing. Amazing. Booing might help too also, but probably. I mean, that's good evidence that booing doesn't help. So Philadelphia fans, and I love you. I spent 4 years there. Just stop booing Santa Claus. All right. Question number 2. It's sort of baseball decision-making dilemma number 2. And Dan, you can start with this one. Let's say you didn't clearly catch a fly ball and the umpire calls it out. Do you admit the truth or do you keep silent and continue the play? Or better put, let's say you make a play and let's rewind this. I'll give a better hypothetical. You tag a player and you try to tag a player. You actually miss the tag. The umpire calls out, but you're still holding the ball aloft as if I got him. You're playing to the umps a little bit. Is that bad play? Is that immoral against the unwritten rules of baseball? Or is it okay to fake things? Derek Jeter famously always pretended he got hit by a pitch when we know he didn't most of the time. Your thoughts, Dan?
No, I think that is baseball. There is no unwritten rule that says you admit to when an ump makes a bad call. You always try to sell it, and then you go. That's part of baseball. Is I think trying to sell calls to benefit your team.
Yeah, I think that's right. But Coach, what do you think?
Absolutely. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
It's part of the game, to show you tagged a guy when you didn't, that's just part of baseball. And my theory is, you're probably going to get a call going against you at some point. So hopefully this evens out over the course of a game or season.
Yeah.
So that's all part of it, getting hit by a pitch or whatever, making a catch, showing you made a catch when you know that it popped in. That's part of the game. Absolutely.
I can't remember anybody ever admitting to a missed call.
Yeah, you're right. There was a play when the Red Sox were still hopeless against the Yankees in the playoffs. I want to say circa 2001 or you know what? Maybe it was 1999. And Knobloch went to tag someone, and there's a photo in the Globe the next day. It was great. He missed him by like a yard. Like there was like a gaping hole in between, but he sold it, and the umpire said, "Oh, I saw Nobby tag him," and we all got pissed off. But you're right. I can't imagine. I'm trying to think if there are any other sports where I think maybe in soccer you get a red card for some kind of chicanery or something, but I might be wrong. I guess
you can get a technical in the NBA for flopping.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. So I guess that would sort of qualify. Yeah.
Well, I think everyone. I'm a huge Celtics fan, and I watch a lot of Celtics. And every shot that every NBA player takes in lane, he's getting fouled. According to me.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, you got to consider it in context. All right, we move on to the third question for 3 up, 3 down. Say you're an outfielder and there's a ball hit in front of you and you have a quick decision to make. Do you sell out? Do you go for the catch? Or, presuming this is a critical moment, there are runners on base or some such thing, do you play it safe and not let the ball get behind you? Of course, it's different in every situation, but I guess the question really is, and this is for you, Coach, do you want the player who is confident enough to know he's going to make that dive, or do you want the player who is a little bit maybe smarter and safer?
I definitely lean towards being more aggressive, for sure. Go get it, make the play. And then with all of our practice and stuff that you do, if you're laying out for a ball, and in fact, we we're just doing it yesterday. With our outfielders at practice, at doing a skill work is, especially a ball in a gap, the other outfielders communicating like take it, so you can lay out for it, knowing you have backup right there. The one that's the tougher one is the one that's they're going to the foul lines or coming straight in, and I want you to be super aggressive. But if you diving a ball and you're like, oh no, I'm not catching this, you better figure out a way to try to keep it in front, blocking it, doing whatever you possibly can to keep that ball in front. But I want to be aggressive, and you do need to be smart. And it's just so much practice and working on making diving plays that when you have a legitimate chance. And if you don't get it, at least you're going to keep it in front. So I want to stay super aggressive in the outfield and make those plays. And then you got to teach the rest of your outfield, like, you better be backing up. because we're going after everything.
Dan, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I like the aggressive player. Like I'm thinking of Lenny Dykstra when he was on the Phillies. He would lay out for everything, and that was fun to watch. That's what made him so great. Bobby Abreu was like the opposite. He was like high fly ball, and he's just jogging in. You're like, how the hell did that get in there? Like, get to the ball. So I like the aggressive approach, but you do have to think like, hey, are we up by 1 run with nobody out in the 9th inning? Like, all right, keep it in front of you. Like, that's an important run. Or is it 2 outs in the inning, men on 2nd and 3rd? Like, you don't let that fall in. You gotta lay out for it. So you want some situational awareness, but all things being equal, you like the aggressiveness.
Yeah, that resulted in a lot of spectacular plays for Lenny Dykstra and some broken bones as well. I think he won. I think his career like 1 for 2 with a broken arm. Like he would break his arm and he would stay in the game, and then finally, begrudgingly would allow himself out.
A lot of tobacco juice on the center field carpet in Philadelphia.
Oh God, yeah. God bless you, Lenny. We miss you. Thanks so much. Both of you did tremendous in 3 Up, 3 Down. And peanuts and Cracker Jacks all around. Thanks for being a good sport, Coach. And back to you, Dan, to wrap things up.
All right. Thanks to Raphael Cerrato for his time on the Base Path podcast. Rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on your preferred platform. Thanks to our producer, David Yaz. The Base Path podcast is a Siemens Media production.